All right, so today on this Warhammer 40K tournament review, we have actually I should say we have two very special guests. One, you already recognize over to my right, Daniel, recent doing really well at the Cherokee Open. What was that, like 6 weeks ago? Or
Uh,
five? It's all a
I don't.
blur now. He already
I don't.
forgot it.
I
He's
don't
like
think.
he's like, yo, man, I'm already on to the next tournament. It's fine. It's fine. And then I know maybe you don't recognize this man yet, but you should. Okay. We got Walter in the house today. And let me tell you, this guy just recently went undefeated. All right. With the Necrons. I mean, that's just the Walter way. If you don't know him, you're sure as heck going to know him after this episode today. Very excited to have him on because he had a list that even myself looking at it, I'm like, yo, what is this guy doing with not one, not two, but three Psychomancers? So very excited to welcome Walter on the PNW 40K here today, breaking down his tournament recap from what was it? Was it 2 weeks ago now? Almost
Yeah,
two
I
weeks
think it
ago?
was. It might have been a little more. Week and a half.
Okay, so it's still fairly recent. So we're going to be going over his list today, kind of breaking it down, his theory behind it, and then we're actually going to hop onto TTS and do a little deployment breakdown and potentially some turn one moves that Walter would make with this list. And so if that's something that interests you, you want to stick around because we're going to be diving right into it right now. So without further ado, we got Walter here, we got Daniel, and Walter, man, how the heck are you, man?
Oh, thank you. I'm doing quite well actually. Feeling great.
Well, I was saying even before we started, like seriously appreciate your time. If you didn't know, he's like literally leaving for the big home nations like team tournament this weekend. So just really appreciate you having him, even if it's a short time. Because maybe Walter here, maybe he's not here for a long time, but he's here for a good time. So, yeah. Anyways, I know Daniel, you had. You had a question or two for Walter maybe before we hopped into his list.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to know more about you. I got to meet you at Valdosta last year. I was running the Monolith and Warrior bricks. I don't know if you remember those. But I remember you.
Battle for Salvation, right?
It was Deming's event. It was Deming's
Oh, I'm
5-man
sorry.
event. Yep.
Valdosta.
Yep. And I remember you tried and selling me on your Psychomancers, and I was just like, I don't see it. But I mean, look, you talk to talk and then you walk the walk. So it is what it is, right? Like, I got to trust it now. So some questions I wanted to know, right, is because like I think often we especially for the podcast stuff, we talk so much about like the game state and everything like that, right? But like I want to know more about you as like a player. Why did you choose Necrons and when did you start playing Necrons? And we lost him.
Oh no, we lost Walter, man. He's gonna come back. He's gonna come back, guys.
I called it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, there he is.
I'm sorry about that. I'm back.
He's reanimated.
he just reanimated, guys. He's back. He's back.
I think I'm gonna have to jiggle my mouse from time to time. In any case, back approximately 2002 or so, I walked into a 40K store, or not a 40K store, just a game store. And I'd been looking for a new hobby for a while, and I decided to pick up Warhammer. And the first army I bought was this cool black box with the green lightning and the skeletons and the Terminator look, and that was Necron Warriors. And back then we had the Black Codex. Everything was phase out, and it was a dark time. But I said, Walter, you go a little too hard on hobbies. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna play one faction, and it's gonna be these guys. And when they're strong, you'll be good, and when they're not, you won't be. And that's just I've stuck to my one faction for 20 years. Always Walter in any tournament punting people. I did drop out for 8th. It was end of 3rd through 6th through 7th. Played War Machine through 8th, and then came back to Warhammer with 9th.
We have a lot in common. I also got into Warhammer during the phase out time. For anyone who doesn't understand that, you had Battle Line, which was Necron Warriors only, and maybe I don't think it was Immortals part of Battle. I don't think Immortals were even a thing.
It wasn't. There was a rule called Necron, which certain models had and others didn't. Monoliths and Prize didn't have it. Warriors, Immortals, and Destroyers did.
That's right.
If you ever only had 25% of your Necron models left, then you would instantaneously lose the game by phase out as your whole army returned to the tombs.
Yep.
The truly poisonous part of this was that this meant that your opponent scored a massacre, so they could just ignore the victory conditions and attempt to hunt down your Necron units. Dark times.
Yep. My when I was in middle school, me and Kylan are from the same hometown, and Z Games, right, Kylan? I was
Yeah,
playing
back in
there.
the day, which we
Dude,
found
back in
out
the day.
later. Like, yeah, it was just crazy how everything, like came together, or
Yeah,
how we crossed
he went
paths.
to high school with my brother, but we never actually got to meet. But I'm really good friends with one of his teammates, right? But yeah, I remember I walked into Z Games. There was a Dennis went with me. He got Tyranids, and I remember I saw a monolith box, and that's when I started playing Necrons. And the phase out rule was something I just had to deal with. But I was in middle school, so I wasn't in the whole competitive scene yet. It was more of just like
Yeah.
little pickup games, and then the occasional RTT. No, that's awesome.
Well, for as bad as phase out was, though, back in that time, which I would say late third and fourth, we had the Deceiver, who was a 300-point model that could not be charged. His rules were totally insane. He had a rule called misdirect, which said that when they end their charge move, he just moved 2d6 inches. So he was fully immune to the entire
Ah,
fighting phase of the game.
I would love a free react move for 0 CP moving 2d6. That sounds
Yeah,
joyous.
that happens after they move. It was totally demented.
I would just like the Deceiver to be good. Like,
I mean,
Well, you got to remember that one time he was too good. He was a spectacularly broken thing, but that was long ago and far away.
that's very cool. So you're going to this team USA thing in Manchester, right?
Yes, I'm one of the candidates, and they're sort of giving us a trial run. We did this earlier with Pyra, and now we're doing it with Home Nations. Half the team was tested at Pyra. I'm going to be part of the other half that are being tested at Home Nations. It's going to be a good time. I'm really looking forward to it.
So then I guess my other question is like, how does it feel to like practice against you know, such a competitive scene? Like, do you ever get nervous? Do you get stressed out? And then if you lose, like, how do you, as a competitive player, especially someone who's, you go to a lot of GTs, I always see your name at these big events because like we live in the same area. So like I'm really good friends with Noah. You played my buddy Cody, who ran Orcs at the same GT that you ended
Oh, wow.
up out. Yeah, he messaged me asking me, "Hey, I need to TTS you because Walter just destroyed me." And yeah, so I always see your name there, right? But like, at Warzone, I did see you lost a game, right? So like all that coming together, right? How do you deal with all the stress of being at the top table all the time, and like how do you deal with losing?
Well, I'm 44, so like I've lost a lot. I've lost more games of War Machine or Warhammer than probably a lot of people have played. I pick myself up and reanimate, right? Like when you lose, it's one more piece of data for the algorithm. You just factor it in.
Yep.
Especially if it's a team and your partners might well win the round anyway. I remind myself that the other player is also trying to win, and that I think a lot of people could benefit from doing a sort of an analysis on a post game win or loss, where you say how much of this result is dice, how much of this result is me being clever, how much of this result is my opponent being clever, and how much is like matchup factors, who goes first, who goes last, that sort of thing. And once you sort of dissolve the defeat like that and you say, well, I did get beat 18-2, but these 2 points came from this one charge failing and this thing, it all becomes much more small, like little bite-sized things to deal with. And you may have made a boneheaded mistake. I'm like, oh, I deployed the guys in the open. I didn't realize he could advance and shoot in this angle with his Storm Raven or whatever. But then you just resolve to not make that mistake again next time and kind of move on. One thing I think is very healthy is, rather than thinking I'm a good player or I'm a bad player, you want to focus it down to identifiable things that you can change. I am a player who deploys his models in safe positions versus I am someone who doesn't look at the enemy's capabilities. So when you get crushed, I took a 20-0 loss not that long ago to John Lennon. A big part of my loss was that I didn't properly understand the longer threat range of the Emperor's Children. And so rather than making a part of my identity, oh, I just got dominated and I have to, get back at it, I say, okay, well, next time I'll try not to do that and see what the game looks like without that particular mistake, And so I try and just sort of dissolve defeats down into, just like victories, of course, smaller components, learn the lessons that are available to you, and then, incorporate that into future games.
I love it. I think oftentimes from our videos that we've done together so far, I see often people like comment like, I've tried it, I've lost, I don't think I can make it work. And I think what you're saying is just like, just like I do. I learn more from my losses than I do my wins. Because if you win, you're
Mhm.
like, all right, cool. You don't really think about it. You just go on to the next game, right? But when you lose, you're kind of like, man, what could I have done? I could have done this better. Could have done this better. So no, that's perfect. And then Emperor's Children is also a very, very good army coming out. Jesper from Sweden?
I don't.
I got to play him on TTS a couple
Oh, nice.
weeks ago. An Emperor's Children. Those demon princes with the wings. They do move fast.
They're
And
pretty
when they
good.
charge you, they hurt.
They're pretty good right now.
The intervention, the counter charge move, also doing mortal wounds is something that it's easy not to be prepared for.
Oh, because you agree. Funny little side story here. You do agree that if you heroically intervene, you get to do the ability on your data sheet.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Cool. That's for Steven. that's for you, Steven. You're welcome. All right.
Quick question for you, Walter, regarding like just the USA Academy. I mean, just being a part of that and being around like those individuals on the team, like what would you say, like, or maybe like how motivational is that for you as like a player, as far as like practice and everything else, being surrounded by those type of players like constantly? I mean, do you feel like it just exponentially has just leveled up your game in the last like couple years?
I think it's extremely motivational.
Yeah.
Seeing other people all striving to do the same thing that you're doing. If you are an adult with, disposable income, it's comparatively rare to actually ever have any risk of not getting something that you want, right? If you
Mhm.
want a computer, you buy it. If you want to, I don't know, run a mile in 3 minutes, you can't do it. Like most things are either yes or no, but
Mhm.
trying to get on a team or trying to win a tournament or something is one of those rare places in our, society where there is still risk.
Mhm.
So, seeing such strong competition always inspires me to be like, these guys are not sleeping. They're practicing every day. If I'm not on my grind, I'm going to come out here to a tournament, get caught, and just that's it. You're only
Mhm.
as good as your most recent showing, right? So you got to
Mhm.
be always ready, always pushing.
I love
Now,
it.
you played quite a bit in ninth edition as well.
hmm
Would you say it's more difficult to be like a top end competitive player now than it was in ninth, just because of how fast the game is changing, or would you say it's easier in some ways?
I think the modern game is more legible for individual player skill.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time in ninth, there was such a sort of morass of data. Someone would be like, my book is these two white dwarfs and this chapter supplement and, this Forge World model and this other thing. And it was not reasonable to expect you to know what was going to happen prior to the game. Um, Whereas in 10th, everyone has the same 6 strats. They have the same army rule and detachment rule and data sheets. So it is possible to do the work of being like, I will know everything my opponent puts on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this, the meta can evolve in a way like a chess meta or another game with known moves. And that allows players to differentiate themselves from one another. Too often in ninth edition, the random element would swamp things, and you'd be like, well,
It's
I
just
certainly hope that
out
I
of
go
my hands.
first.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. Well, that's so good. Definitely some good insight there. I want to flip over to the actual list here that Walter took to this recent GT. I'm going to pull this up here so he can see it as well. And let me make sure. Can you see that okay, Walter?
Yes.
And
By the way, internet, when I look up like this, I'm looking at my screen. When I look down like this, I'm looking at my camera. So
oh yeah, no, you're
if I
fine,
seem
man.
to
You're
like veer off into space, it's not that I've forgotten you.
no. You're good, man. You're good. So yeah, just swinging over to the to the list here. So yeah, kind of take us if you don't mind, just kind of taking us line by line as far as like your theory behind the list and kind of why you included what you did. And again, like you can go as granular or surface level as you want, but the floor is yours, my
Sure.
man.
Okay, so I've always been a proponent of the Awoken Dynasty. I've defended Awoken Dynasty against Canoptek Court back in the day, then against Hypercrypt, then against Shatterstar, and I continue to believe in the Awoken Dynasty. It is simply an amazing detachment. The +1 to hit on virtually all models is Titanic, and the Resurrection strat is meta defining. You can do a lot worse than an Awoken Dynasty as a Necron. So of course my list was Awoken Dynasty. Being Awoken Dynasty, you want to have a lot of characters. If you can do something with a character or with someone else, you prefer to do it with a character, because the character in question will be able to resurrect, which means the opponent cannot rely on the shooting phase to clear an objective or a charge lane or something like that. They have to do all their work in the fight phase, and if they do it only in the fight phase without shooting, then the next turn you have a free half-health character wandering around doing strats or whatever. So, of course, Awoken Dynasty is where I make my living. I've played that since the start of 10th, and I'll probably continue to play it unless it is nerfed into the floor. Looking at this game, this list has evolved from a list that initially began with all pieces to trade with and just a few scoring guys. I condensed a little bit for this match. I lost one of my Doomsday Arcs and got a big unit to sort of make an identity. And the idea is that in teams, having such an identity will be useful for pairing purposes. So we should start by discussing that. I have a 6-man Wraithbrick in this army with a Reanimator and a Technomancer wielding the Netherrealm Casket. This combination of things makes one of the toughest units in the game to shift. And of course, in the Awoken Dynasty, if they attempt to shift it, you can use the strat to resurrect, typically D3 plus 1, because you're led by a character and near a Reanimator. And you can do this very often twice in a phase, once in the shooting and once in the fight. I'm sorry, twice in a turn, once in the shooting and once in the fight phase. So the identity of the list right there is that this is a unit that is essentially unshiftable by many other players in one turn without, being able to get all to 2,000 points on it. Like if you fling it out turn 1, very few lists can just pop it, right? So you've got this stealth Wraithbrick, and that's sort of the core of the list, is the idea that this unit on the appropriate turn will challenge the sort of nexus of the game and just lock everything down in a smothering blanket of wraiths, allowing the Scorpex and other workers to do, solid work. So that's the original point, is the Wraithbrick with Technomancer and Canoptek Reanimator. Those guys are going to move towards the objective that I feel is most likely to define the game. Either my natural, if I think I'm heading for a loss, or the, my natural meaning the objective that is closest to my home base, or the center if I believe that I'm likely to win. Is a decision I make at deployment time. Beyond that, there are 2 Doomsday Arcs. The Doomsday Arcs will be deployed out of line of sight behind buildings. Their job is to make certain that the opponent cannot just sit in the lanes. Together, they can defeat one tank, sometimes, not usually a Dorn, but other tanks, They are not dependably able to defeat a tank, but the opponent cannot presume that they will not. And also they prevent you from being bullied by, Terminator bricks. If someone's just like, look out, here come the 18 Scythe Guard, or here comes, whatever, you can deploy them in the open lanes all the way at the back of the board, such that their 24-inch guns won't reach you. And then you can use their heavy guns to hit on 2s and just lay the hammer down on exposed objectives and evaporate Terminators. If you do that, the reroll 1s to hit strategy comes into its own, because obviously at that point in time, since you're hitting on 2s, it's simply reroll hits. So the Doomsday Arcs are predominantly there to make you something of a lane predator. You're not trying to be a guard list. You're not trying to dominate open lanes, but you are trying to say to the other player, you cannot be sure of owning objectives just by putting 5 bodies on them. You have to treat me with respect in the shooting phase. It's nice that they're invul save, and it's nice they're OC5. They do a lot of like, oh no, this say that a carnivore is engaged with one Scorpec lord, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to charge him with this Doomsday Arc. Now, if he splits his attacks between the 2 of them, and they each have a 4-up invul save, it's very unlikely that he splats both. So he's going to be trapped in place here. So you can use the Doomsday Arcs for a variety of things, but for the most part, they are lane predators. They also do a decent amount of actions, which is embarrassing, but they're speed 10. Not a lot of things in our army are.
An OC5.
Yeah, really. Necrons in general have lower toughness and high OC than you would expect. Next up, still talking about scenario pieces, I have a unit of Flayed Ones. Of course, Flayed Ones are an infiltrator unit. Typically, they're deployed near on my natural with the purpose of, on the first turn, being one of 2 units that can do cleanse or, contain or something like that. Occasionally, the enemy will look vulnerable to jail, and I will deploy them as far forward as possible and advance them forward on the first turn, because toads are a good person to do this too. Someone like that, where you can theoretically keep them away while you terraform or something. Wraiths have a variety of uses. I don't try and fight with my Wraiths. I know certain Shatterstar builds will take a lot of Wraiths and actually get them to do battle, but for me, speed 5 melee weapon dudes that can't survive guns is not real.
Yeah.
Then I have a Hexmark Destroyer. It's probably the last scenario piece that I want to just sort of point out. The Hexmark is, of course, a character, so he can be resurrected. He almost always goes to whichever objective the Wraiths are not going to. And he is very often followed by some sort of tough guy unit. He will be on the objective in plain sight. The tough guys will be within 6 inches behind a wall. And the point will be that if the enemy shoots him down, he resurrects. If they charge him, the tough guys will countercharge. If they just stand on the objective with him, the psychos will scare them, and it'll be my point. So he tries to scam an objective while the Wraiths take one by main force. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Situational. I get that.
Yeah. But he does a lot of actions. The psycho or the Hexmark is predominantly an action monkey, just speed 8. Much love for the man.
He's so good in Awaken.
I'm a big fan.
Yep.
Then I've got my 3 Psychomancers. Psychomancers have an interesting role. It's kind of hard to describe. I always tell people to play them, and they'll impress you. The most important role they have is Harbinger of Despair, which says once per turn at the start of your command, movement, shooting, charge, or fight phase, you can select an enemy unit within 18 inches. The unit takes a battle shock with a -1. The most important fact about that is that the start of the command is before scoring, which happens at the end of the command phase. So if the enemy pushes up on you, say a brigand, and you've got, say, a Hexmark on the objective, before you score, you say, my Psychomancer is going to nominate you with Harbinger of Despair. Go ahead and take a battle shock. And if he passes, you do it again. If he passes, you do it a third time. For most people, a battle shock is a coin flip, right? Their leadership 6, they become a 7. That's slightly better in their favor, but it's still close enough to a coin flip. So if you treat it as a coin flip and you say hitting someone with 3 of these -1 battle shocks is a 7/8 chance that they will fail, you can often seal away the possibility of the enemy taking your objective by just standing there. They have to kill you off of it to take it. And if they kill you off of it, they expose themselves to Scorpic countercharges, and that's just, good for you. So that's a very powerful thing. Psychos also ruin enemy defensive strats. If the enemy has Mists of Deimos, or the strat in Gladius where they get a reactive move if you end their move near them, or the strat in Vanguard where if you charge them, they get to move, they will very often build their move phase around the idea that in your next turn, these units are going to be defended by these strats. And if you just, 7/8 of the time, it's gone. All of a sudden you walk up and Calgar is just standing there gormlessly. He doesn't have his Armor of Contempt. He's not going to move anywhere. And you line up 2 Doomsday Arcs on him and you charge him with the Scorpex. That's very often all she wrote, right? So the Psychos function in essentially those 2 capacities: thwarting enemy defensive measures, and also trying to, once or twice a game, steal an objective in the primary phase. I also am not shy about throwing them out to do strats. Like, if I get containment on the first turn, a Psycho will just walk through the wall, stand in the open, and contain. If the antags shoot him down and I don't have the strat to resurrect him because I'm resurrecting a more important character that shoot phase, and he's dead, and there's only 2. It's fine. He's 55 points. So the Psychos are a bit of an interesting piece, but their job is, as I've mentioned, sort of utility stuff. Most games, they net me between 5 and 20 primary points, and they will also make the trades go my way more than they should because they disable enemy strats. Very, very interesting guys. Then lastly,
very interesting tech for sure. For sure.
With that out of the way, all that's left is the trading pieces. I've got 2, what are they called? Lich Guard units. One led by an Overlord and one led by the Stormlord. They're just fighting dudes. They swing a bunch of attacks with +1 to hit. They're difficult to defeat because they have the 4-up invul and the -1 to wound from defending a noble. The -1 damage guy has the Resurrection Orb. The Stormlord has 3 2 damage gun attacks. His lightning pulse also goes off before the end of the command phase, so it's yet another method to try and steal primary. They're fine trading pieces, nothing to write home about, nothing special. The Scorpex are, of course, our best melee trading unit. So those three are
They're so
each
good.
led by a character, and I think I don't have to sell Scorpex to a couple of Necron players. You guys understand that having
I
units
just had to
can be
sell him
like,
to Daniel. That's all, Walter. But he's a believer now, man. It took me months, but he's
Hey, look.
finally on board.
All right, Walter, you can agree. All right, everyone has their own play styles. Everyone has like, okay, great example when the I can't remember his name, but when he won LVO with the Monolith and the Immortals, right? I ran the same kind of build for ATC basically all of last year, including that team event. But instead of Immortals, I ran Warriors because all last edition I was running Silvertide, right? And so I've always loved Warriors. I have like 120 of them all painted the same way, right? And every time I went to a game, especially right after LVO, they're always like, why are you running Warriors and not Immortals? And I just got to be like, I'll show you. You'll see, right? It's a bunch of OC with like, a 4-up invuln with Orican, right? All that to say, Necrons are great because there's 1,000 different ways to run the same list.
absolutely.
I was not a believer in the Scorpec Lord. I went to Cherokee, ran the Nightbringer. I noticed when I went to Onslaught a couple months ago or a month ago or whatever, I lost my last round. You might know him, David Azawa.
Yep.
And I lost my last round to him. And I realized the Nightbringer just doesn't trade well. It's just not good. So I lost him and I brought Scorpex. And I have played about 5 or 6 games with the Scorpex instead. And Kylan, you were right. I will never go back. You tried to summon the Silent King still, but the Silent King is really good. I love the Silent King. I have a very nice Silent King. He's not my playstyle, so I'm not running.
Yeah.
I get
I'm
it.
not
I
trying
get it.
to sell you on Silent Kings. But for this list, what I needed was trading pieces that were led by characters. Obviously, Scorpex are excellent characters for that. I refer to the Scorpec with the Energaic Dermal Bond as the Scorpec King. He is my warlord. It's a little touch of romance that he has the warlord tag on him. It should probably technically be on the Technomancer in terms of like who's most likely to get to the enemy objective.
Man, we're gonna have to change it for Walter here. There we go. Bam.
There we go. The Scorpec King.
Boom.
But obviously, number one most resurrected character, right? A 4-up feel no pain character. Incredible.
I mean, you already know. I can't tell you how many games I've had. That single guy just holds up an entire flank by himself.
He's so
throw him
good.
into a 30 orc brick and.
Have you tried this list with Illuminor yet, or have you tried to fit Illuminor in here so you have basically 2 of these 4-up guys?
Illuminor actually came out in the older version. I want to say he was in up to 1.5. Illuminor, even after I got rid of the Warriors, he lingered on for a very long time. Eventually, the insight that I had that made me discard Illuminor was that he is essentially as expensive as the Overlord and the 5 Lich Guard. And he doesn't do anywhere near as much damage. Now, obviously, he's much more mobile. But when you consider that guy has -1 damage and Illuminor has a 4-up feel no pain, and you factor in the guys in the Resurrection Orb and stuff, to me it was pretty clear that the Overlord and the 5 Lich Guard was a superior package. Although I do miss the Speed 8 every day.
Yeah, that was my one question. I think looking at this list with the Lich Guard was I feel like an even more of an interesting choice than the Psychomancers, just because I'm like, do you run into issues because they do move 5 where it's just hard to really stage them in a place where like your opponent can really just play around their movement?
Very often, one of them will be in tactical reserve, and they will use rapid ingress to get a charge on a flank objective. The other one, the Stormlord, will be sort of front and center in the army. Typically, they're the ones who advance in the first turn in order to be ready to interrupt or intervene if someone charges the hex mark. So you do occasionally get a situation where an anti leaves that whole flank to rot, and you've got Hexmark plus Stormlord plus 5 Lich Guard just standing on a home objective. But then you get 5 points around. It's not the worst thing in the world. But I definitely, you can never reposition them, right? Like once you deploy the Stormlord to one objective, and once the other guy comes out of reserves, they're only where they are, right? They're never going to get anywhere else. But with those particular techniques, they do get to the places that they're supposed to get to.
Plus, you have those doomsday arcs, so like you have a big footprint to like block your backside if like you do have to move out, which is really nice.
I'm usually a proponent of like pick your grave. I don't often screen too hard. If the bad guys want to be away from the objectives, I'll generally let them. Like,
Okay.
oh no, they're behind me. Oh no, like they oath marked my Doomsday Arc twice because they have Gilliman, and here comes the Inceptors to kill them. And I'm like, well, you didn't kill the Wraiths, so now next turn that's another 15. Like the game is decided on the points. If the bad guys want to land behind me, it's frequently fine.
I like that, especially from like a team event setting. Is
Although,
like I like singles events. I've been doing more singles events this year, but like you said, team events are just, even if you lose, you have 4 to 7 other people you can depend on to like have their games go their way. So it's always about points, right? If you lose, it's fine. You can lose 199. Who cares? Because it's a tie.
Yeah.
So,
although I should confess that my indifference to screening, you mentioned a game with Noah. He actually was able to screen me so thoroughly that on turn 3, I lost a score pack unit to being unable to come out of reserves because he fully boxed off the board, screened 360 the entire board with his Blood Angels.
Noah is, 1, a very nice dude. 2, very good.
Crazy.
He is very good. I know you're really good, so that's why as soon as I saw that you beat him last round, I messaged him right away, and I was like, "Yo, so how'd it go? Right? Tell me what happened." And then he said, "I need to play you on TTS so I can get more practice." And I was like, "I'm not Walter, but sure, I'll practice against you. I'll play you." No, yeah, it's very it's fun times.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. He was playing a list that I hadn't seen a lot lately, so that was a really good like reality check where I was like, "Oh, the Blood Angels are here. Okay, let's focus up, boys."
They're back. They're back.
That was also surprising because he's been playing Death Guard, so I'm assuming you knew that too, right? So like, yeah,
that's very just very, very cool tech, and the fact that it seems like sometimes with the playstyle you don't really need to play the race as aggressively early, potentially as well, depending on the matchup.
My usual rule is I like to push the Wraiths into the open to be seen by like a guard player or something on the exact round that they would rather shoot anyone else. Right?
Yep.
So like if on the first turn I go first, I just want to be like hex marks up, everyone else is hiding, we're all staged up. And then they're like, Russ is lumber into view, here comes some Cascarin and stuff. And I'm like, okay, now the Doomsday Arcs pull out to attack your opening stuff. And I'm like, okay, the Dorns are going to come out to kill the Doomsday Arcs, which means the Wraiths also come out and they take the center in a grip of steel. And you're like, okay, now you have to choose. If you ignore the Doomsdays, they're going to aim and fire. If you ignore the Wraiths, you're going to lose the points. So like you want to stage them on the same round the score packs are attacking. You want to stage them on the same round that other things are happening. You never want the opponent to have a turn where they just tee off on the Wraiths and you have no clap back, because they're all 45 miles away, just lighting them up, right?
It's like a mini threat overload almost.
Yep.
In there. No, that's good stuff. We knew Daniel was at least gonna go away at least once, man. He just disappeared here. But I guess while he disappeared, let me flip over to the TTS view. Give me 1 second here. Oh, there he is. He's back. Bam. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
So something I wanted to ask you, especially in a team event setting, right? If you're doing your like your matrix and stuff, without giving us too much information, because I don't want to give you a disadvantage when you go to Manchester and stuff. But if I was to like run this list for ATC, for example, and name it Walter's list, no, what would be like a automatic don't put me into, like, you know what I mean?
So there are basically 2 problems that this list has had over the years. I've tried to fix the second one. The first one is just the primary problem. So the second and like less problematic one is that at long range, you are much, much weaker than almost anyone. So if the other player's like, I'm going to hang back and just absolutely paste you with my 10 tank list or whatever, your only consolation, really, because the first thing they're going to paste is those Doomsday Arcs that, are your only way to hit back, is the fact that you'll be getting primary. So if the other player can simultaneously paste you and hold their own primary, with small scoring stuff that your psychos don't work on or whatever, you can be put into a situation where the enemy gets to activate for several rounds without you reducing their pieces. At that point in time, it's very likely you'll be defeated. You have to be able to make the Scorpex and the Lich Guard hit home. If the enemy is like, you are deftly screened, the board is very open, and all of my Oath tanks are just firing over and over and over again, you'll be defeated in that way. So this list presupposes that you're going to be concealed enough that Scorpex and Lich Guard coming out of Rapid Ingress are able to attack meaningful models on objectives. And if that's not true, that you get a compensation in terms of primary points. If the opponent is able to make those conditions false, you are having a very big problem. So I've had a few losses like that. Another big problem is damage cliff. If the opponent is able to be like, I don't think you can defeat this unit, here it comes, here comes the airplane style right down the middle at you, and you go all in, Mortarian's like, and then his 18 Scythe Guard charge you or whatever, you can just die. Like, this list is very good at hitting down a lot of medium targets, but occasionally, mostly because of Necron base size problems, cannot get one very big powerful target. You kind of have to rely on the Doomsday Arcs and their random number of shots. So if the enemy's like, my Silent King is -1 to damage, he's coming up the middle, how you feeling, buddy? You're like, okay, I'm going to shoot him with the Doomsday Arcs. Each of them will probably take out one of his Minears. The first Scorpec unit will take half his wounds. Then he's going to intervene and kill the second Scorpec unit before they attack. It's going to be him still alive. Then his Reanimator will go. He'll be almost back at his Minear. Then his army will fly up behind him and use his rerolls and just paste everybody. So the problem that is almost unsolvable is that there is no one all-encompassing damage unit, right? You can't be like, I dropped 15 Scions, God says hello, right? Like, there exists things in the game that you cannot defeat in one activation, and if your psychos are not on the ball, you're not going to be able to guarantee that you get a second activation because they'll intervene and splat your second unit. So that's essentially the second weakness. The first is that somewhat complicated situation I mentioned, and the second is a big guy bullying you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, it all makes sense. I mean, what would you say was your, like, I guess, toughest matchup at this most recent GT? Would you say it was Noah round, or what gave you, I guess,
I think
like, some
Noah
of the
was the one I was
difficulty?
the closest one to losing on. My first round opponent was actually playing Lions and just didn't fail 4-ups. If he'd kind of believed in his army and pushed them at me, I would have been defeated. But he was playing in a very reasonable and cautious manner, and I was able to sort of team up on each of his units as they came out. There was a match with an Eldari player that I also thought was particularly interesting. Big apologies to your friend, the Orc player. That match was became simple swiftly. But the match with Noah's Blood Angels, the match with the Inari list, and just the first list which is a Lucky Custode, which, anytime you meet a Custode who is rolling well, you got to be like, okay, it's going to be tough, boys. So there were the 3 times that I thought I was in danger.
Well, we have some TTS pulled up here, some good GW layouts. So he's definitely not giving anything away for home nations because we already know he's playing on WTC. So he's good. He's good there. But we get to have like Crucible of Battle, layout 2 GW. We have Walter's list here on the right, and he's actually just going to walk through just how he would deploy this army on this layout, and then maybe give a couple of first turn moves. He kind of alluded to it in his list, but just so visually people at home can see it. And yeah, man, the floor is yours as far as like what's kind of going through your head or headspace.
Okay, so looking at this board, I'm going to imagine that we are in the green. So my first question is, do I want the Wraiths on the top objective or the middle objective? I think probably the top objective is the one that is most appropriate for Wraiths. Is it possible for you to zoom in somehow on this thing such that I can see it a little better? Even a little more. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Okay. So it looks to me like the Wraiths want to go to the top objective. In the middle, I would like to imagine the Hexmark Destroyer standing on my end of that objective, and nearest to him inside that building, a unit of, let's say, the Overlord and his Lich Guard.
Or that
The
heroic
lower right
intervene,
objective,
eventually.
yes,
Yeah.
perfectly, exactly in their range. The lower right objective, we should have a unit of Scorpex in that building, ready to come through and kill whoever goes there. Probably the Scorpec King and his unit would be the best for that. I think one Doomsday Arc immediately behind them. Depending on whether the enemy can threaten a Doomsday Arc from range, it might be in the bottom lane, or it might be sort of pulled up a little bit, sort of out of sight, turned sideways. And then in the top left, the other Doomsday Arc ready to move into that building or through that building, depending on which one. More to the right for the bottom left one, over the building, over it, all the way to the right.
Like
Just
up
past
here?
the building. Keep going right. All right. Now up. There you go. Somewhere like that, depending on like how hard they threaten. But if you have that guy
Interesting.
there, the other guy behind that top left building, yep. So he can either come into the building or he can rotate and move through it. Next to that top guy, give those wraiths in a position to move on to the left objective, and the reanimator in a position to follow them.
Classic TTS, guys.
Do you ever find yourself deploying the race like out in the open for turn one, just in case, like if they shoot them, you get an extra bit of movement if you reanimate?
Usually if I deploy the wraiths in the open, it's because the board is extremely Planet Bowling Ball, and Scorpex have claimed all the good spots. I don't like to take shots on the first turn, but sometimes it has to happen. Yep, so Scorpex in lower right with the Wraith. And then in the center, put the Stormlord and his guys. Perfect. Yeah, the center should be the Stormlord and a unit of Lich Guard, and right in a position to go into that building. And then also a Hexmark in a position to move on to the objective. Next, we're going to place our Psychomancers. There'll be one in the lower left. He'll be on the back side of our objective, trying to screen out the home deployment zone. One should be in the top center immediately behind the Lich Guard, and the final should be in the top left behind that building. He'll be moving up into the corner of that building. Flayed ones, let's infiltrate them inside of the building where the Scorpex are going to go, in the lower middle there. Perfect. Their job this turn will be to either contain or cleanse, depending on what we need to do. So we could cleanse in the top middle with the wraiths, and we could cleanse in the lower right with Scorpex. If we want to do deploy teleport homers, we could do so with the what's his name, the Hexmark in the center. Although notably, if we do that, we cannot advance to get on the center objective. So that's actually a little bit of a weakness, but there's no way to fix that without changing the location of the wraiths. And I think the building there is too much of an advantage. If we wanted to, sabotage, we would do it with the central Lich Guard, assuming that we don't believe that the enemy are going to push the Hexmark. If they are going to push the Hexmark so that we don't fail our strat, we would do it with the Reanimator in the top left. So now we've got all the guys who have specific jobs. We're going to take another Scorpec unit. We're going to put it inside our home objective, inside that building, immediately north of the Psycho. This unit's job is going to be to run to where the, what are they called?
Lich Guard.
The Lich Guard are. After the Lich Guard go forward.
Makes sense.
And then we still have...
We got one unit of Scorpex left, and then the Lich Guard unit with the...
Yeah, those two are going to be... those two are both going to be Rapid Ingress units.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
One of them will come in on turn 2, and the other will turn in on turn 3. Usually, it's going to be the Lich Guard on turn 2, the Scorpex on turn 3.
When you make your lists, again, just general, right? Do you always ensure you have at least 1 or 2 Rapid Ingress units?
I've been trying them lately, and as you heard, my game with Noah had caught me bad. But I like to have at least one thing to make the opponent stay honest in terms of screening. I've been considering lately whether it might not, instead of the second one, be better to have a unit of 5 Triarch Praetorians. who have the deep strike rule, such that they would have to screen the areas of their deployment zone that are not near the edge on turn 2. But I like to have at least one, just to make the opponents sort of expend mental cycles, and also to make sure I can. The way I'd say it is that Necrons are too slow to redeploy from one section of the board to another. So if an Eldar or a Grey Knight just sort of blips over to one flank and goes really hard and leaves 1,000 of your points stranded off on the other side, it's really nice to have these 2 units that you can just redeploy to where the fire is.
Makes sense.
Do you ever run into like situations though, especially like on a board like this where they have like firing lanes like all the way down, where it's like, I mean, especially with these Scorpex, your opponent gives you like an angle like over here or something. I mean, obviously you probably have to read the firing lanes, but are you mainly ingressing them where you're kind of already in a threat overload situation where they have to go after more juicier targets and then they just end up staying alive in the process, more or less?
I mean, sometimes they ingress just to die, right? But you can resurrect the character. But on turn 2, after the end of the opponent's movement, you look at the board and you say, is there anywhere that would be made prettier by the addition of 5 Lich Guard and an Overlord? And very often there's somewhere that's behind a wall or somewhere that's next to a unit that is obviously doing something else. Like here's some Fire Dragons looking at the Doomsday Arc with Menace of Forethought. And you're like, well, now there's some Lich Guard next to them, which means that after they clap my Doomsday Arc, they will be murdered, right? And so you just kind of put them out near whoever on the enemy's team is holding the objective. And then next turn they move 5 and they charge 4 and they either take it or they use up one of their fallback strats. And then, of course, getting rid of Lich Guard is annoyingly difficult. They're not wraiths, but they're not easy, right?
Yeah.
And Scorpex kill things, and they're all got characters. So you do all the awoken tricks.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And even with this Doomsday Arc too, I mean, you just kind of accept this firing lane here.
It would depend on the opponent's list. We could certainly be back behind the building where you initially put it, the back left, but a lot of lists cannot kill a 14 wound tank with the things that they can move into the lane beyond 24 inches. So unless they are equally daring in putting their tank out in the lane, you're very often able to be like, I just kind of waited, because you start with 3 Psychomancers and then a Hexmark. You typically deploy in such a manner the opponent has to choose first. And once you've seen that their Vindicators are off in a different area or something, you just put the Doomsday Arcs down in a place where you're like, oops. What you still have left to go is 1 Hammerhead gun or Hammer Strike gunship, right? And if the opponent is not feeling a kind of way and is just like, I don't think that I necessarily will go first, they will often not try and challenge you once you go down late. Imperial Knight players very often have like 1 or 2 of the War Dog equivalents that shoot enemy vehicles, right? And so you can be like, once those are down, if I prop myself up in a lane that they're not in, looking at an objective, it's very plausible that they will not be able to attack on the first turn. And whoever comes in that objective is getting an aiming Doomsday Arc firing straight into his face.
Yeah. I mean, that is a good point, because, I mean, especially if they don't kill the target. I mean, like you're saying, especially for vehicles outside of 24, most of the time they don't. Then the next turn, the clapback, you're hitting on 2s with dev wounds. And then you potentially maybe even have the position to bring that other arc out if you really need to, and probably get the same firing lane, especially on a layout like this where it's generally more open. So,
well, also, like, it's really nice to have it in the front, because you're never locked into the idea that these Doomsdays are precious, right? Like sometimes you'll see Calgar and a bunch of nerds over there, and you're like, okay, the Doomsday Arc is going to move up and then charge this guy in the objective and just be OC5. Like sometimes it's more important to keep the Scorpex safe and you want to send the Doomsday forward. So like using its full high OC bullying capacity and its tank shocks and stuff is important. I like to keep my Doomsdays pretty up front.
Yeah, no, I think too, it's like I've noticed, like with Necrons and with Awaken, we don't necessarily have like the easiest piece. I mean, this is layout dependent as well, but like we're not the best army, I feel like, in terms of like harassing your opponent's natural expansion.
Yeah.
Just because we don't have like those, Praetorians would be a great unit for it, but it's just like at 100 points for 5 guys, it's just like it's tough to, I don't know, it's tough to justify, but like it makes a lot of sense as far as with these ingress plays with the Lich card, where if they're already in a threat overload situation, you're ingressing them in near their natural expansion. It's like, well, here's another target that I can't go after, then it being safe. And then, I mean, it's no slouch for 140 points for that unit, 15 attacks with the guys hitting on 2s. You can make them strength 7,
Yeah.
AP 3,
Well,
a good
also
unit.
like they're just very difficult for a lot of if the enemy's like, I want to kill a Lich Guard unit, I'm going to bring a bunch of AP 1/2 damage attacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they work out that they need 10 such wounds to kill the squad, right? And you have the free strats that can't be divided among 2 units. And then it goes on to the character. And AP 1/2 damage is exactly the worst thing in the world to bring to kill him, because he has a 2-up armor save and is -1 damage. So if it took 10 to kill the unit, it will take 18 more to finish off that character, who will then resurrect. So like it's a unit that you kind of need 2 different profiles to kill. And that guy's 12/3/3 axe is no joke. If he's able to start biting on a war dog or something, he will in pretty short order kill it, right? It's not common for them to kill one of those things on the charge, but if the enemy doesn't fall back, it is very common for them to get it in 2 rounds of combat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a very mediocre unit, but I'm fond of it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting tech for sure. Do you feel like there's anything missing that we didn't highlight as far as like the deployment or anything like going through your mind after seeing like all this setup?
Well, this deployment was all done sort of imagining an enemy list that was very generic. Like if the enemy is very shooty, you have to sort of be a lot more cagey. You can't be, up and there. If the enemy is a prison list, you have to be a lot more blatant, put everything in the front. So like you would alter this deployment depending on what's going on with each enemy list, and whether there are particular pieces that have to be protected at all costs, whether you in fact need to screen your home because they're going to 6-inch deep strike you with a 20-man unit and just blah. So it's very like, this is 101, right? Like the plan on this turn, not knowing what the enemy is we'll accomplish any missions that we get. We'll put a hex mark in the center and a unit of Lich Guard in the center ready to defend him, and a unit of Scorpex behind them. We'll put the Wraiths on our top objective with the Reanimator hidden but ready to reanimate them. And we will put Scorpex in a position to threaten their natural with some Wraiths potentially just advancing into their zone right over. The Doomsday Arcs will stay safe this turn, and the 3 Psychos will be in a position where they can each threaten 1 to 2 objectives. And then you will pass the turn. And the opposing player will begin to navigate this minefield. And if they make a mistake, for example, they might not understand what they need to do to kill the Wraiths. That's very common, because Wraiths look like a tough unit, but they are, in fact, an insanely tough unit. Or if they decide to just run up and out OC you on a point and they don't understand about the Psychomancers, or if they just sort of present their chests and say, let's have a fighting thing, the opponent can definitely lose very quickly. And if they're going to sort of unravel your web and rip you up, then it'll be educational and interesting to see how it happens.
What's the last thing you deploy? Like, do you have like a unit where you're like, I really need to see where they put this before I put this down? Or is
So
that
my deployment philosophy is that you go from most predictable to least predictable. So I start with Psychos, who are kind of always in the same places, right? One's middle, one's home, and one's sort of on an adventure. Then I follow that up with the decision about which objective is going to be the Wraith objective. That gives me 2 more choices of the Wraith and the Reanimator, who always follows the Wraith. Then the other objective is going to get the Psycho or the Flayed ones and the Hexmark. So at this point, we are 7 drops in. If the opponent is still hiding their tanks, if they're still, being bashful, I'll usually drop the Scorpec King to threaten the final objective. And then, There's another Scorpec unit, which is very likely a home Scorpec unit. And then only then do the tanks have to come down. And of course, if the Scorpecs are less important than the tanks, you can reverse that, right? But I typically use the models that there are no surprises about, right? Everybody knows Wraiths are going to an objective. Everybody knows the Hexmark's going to be a pain in the middle. The 3 home characters are the 3 home characters, right? So you use the things the opponent already knows before the game begins to try and get them to give you real information for your fake information, right? Like they are also going to begin by deploying their infiltrators. Then they're going to begin by deploying the guys who hold their home base. Then they're going to deploy a scout unit. You know, like you're in a battle to see who has to place the first real objective. But eventually Calgar will come down, right? And then you're like, okay, I know where he is beginning the game. That's where those guys are. That means Gilliman's probably here, and you can kind of derive where the rest of their list is going to be.
Yeah, I think deployment's super important because, you know, I'm a firm believer that deployment can lose you the game, right? I think a lot of, like, especially in the competitive, like once you get to competitive things or whatever, like that's the first thing I had to work on quick was like my deployments starting from 9th edition because I took a big break because I was in the Navy for 11 years. And so, yeah, that was one of the things I kept losing my first couple of games when I came back on was just my deployment sucks. And so, no, it's always good to hear how other people deploy and like what they're thinking about.
So I have a fairly firm philosophy that the units are not just units; they are themselves throughout the game, right? So if I trade a Scorpec to you on turn 1, I'm giving up 4 more turns of Scorpec moving for, you know, 8 more fight phases of Scorpecs and so on. I want a high price for that, but I'll trade it for a Klondike bar on turn 5, right? You know, like I become ever more willing to trade models for points as the game moves on because the models are worth less, right? Similarly, when I deploy a Lich Guard unit, they're not going to go very far over the course of the game. They move 5. They very rarely will advance because I'm going to want to do an action or I'm going to want to charge. Lich Guard are not racing around. Wraiths are faster, but, you know, broadly speaking, they are where they are. So the only time in the game I have a real ability to move Lich Guard or Wraiths Wraiths is in the initial stages. So deployment allows them to move. They'll never move again. So it's an incredibly momentous decision. One thing, little piece of advice for people who are trying to get better out there, and when I try to keep it in mind myself, is that it's very, very easy to think that the problem that you have is that the player that you admire, or whoever you looked up to you, is better at thinking through the dilemmas of Warhammer than you are. And that's frequently not the case. I've known novices and medium players, and often they will go through the same thoughts as far as whether they should do a charge or whatever. The difference, the one that makes one of them medium and the other one is still a learner, is stopping and taking the time to actually think, right? People will deploy thoughtlessly, just throw their models out on the table. You know, there'll be a guy behind a building and you're like, it's gonna be 2 rounds before he gets to play. What's going on? And then they will think incredibly hard on their first turn where their movement's going to be. And it's like in chess, once you're in a lost variation, you start being like, now is the time to use the clock. And it's like, no, buddy, the time to use the clock was before this. You know, the most important decision in the game is what you put in your list. The next most important decision is where you put the models on the first turn. You know, like everything is less important each turn because it can affect less of the game, right? You very often make the last decision of consequence in the second or third round. Everything after that is going to be forced. You know, my models move and attack the models that are on the objectives in front of them. So taking the time and the care to do it early is counterintuitive because it feels like the real game is later, but the real game almost certainly is not going to actually give you the choices. The choices are made very early, you know, like a pairing choice, what you put in your list, and how you do your deployment. I want to say that between strong players, that's 70% of the results right there, right? Who did we put forth to attack on this particular turn, while they still had, you know, their tank pairing or whatever to trap us, is very often more important than how you do your move phase in the first turn. Like the choices that control what other choices you will receive in the future are where your focus should be.
I love it.
It's solid. I mean, even prepping for this GT coming up like this, not this weekend, but next weekend. I mean, I can't wait for that package to drop because that's all I'm going to be doing is just analyzing. Okay, where are we putting this? Why are we putting this here? Because like you just said, I mean, that's like some of the most valuable stuff, and it kind of eases your mind during the tournament too, because you're like, all right, I've already practiced this. I don't need to take up the headspace with that. I can think more about what my opponent's like trying to do.
You only have so much attention. It's a resource like CP. People act like they can just tell themselves to lock in, and now you have infinite attention. And maybe for 20-year-olds, but I'm 44, man. Like everything is very determined by me. You know, everything is. This is the time that I think about the command phase. Now is the time I think about the next turn, and like I can't veer off that because like three games in a day is mentally taxing. Like it's hard to sort of keep, you know, there. So as much as possible, you want to automate that. Like when it comes time to do my command phase, I have a whole pad where I say, all right, I'm getting my CP. All right, I'm getting my cards. Now I'm going to use my Psychomancers. The start of the command phase is now over. It's time for moves that happen during the command phase. Do I use Imhotep or not? It is time for moves that happen in the battle shock steps. The Necrons have to take their battle shocks. It's time. It's now the end of the command phase. I'm going to use my resurrection protocols for every unit. Now it's time to score the objectives. Like you go down the list and you do it the same way every time, and there's no thinking about it. When it's time to do the move phase, I say, all right, I'm going to move the models. At the end of the move phase, before the reinforcement, my Technomancer will heal a nearby unit for D3. I do that every time. Like when it's time to fight phase, the start of the fight phase, I say this and this score pick unit are using their canoptic plasmacytes. Like you just systemize it like you're a jet fighter pilot with a checklist, right? Like you do not want to be thinking about anything that is under your power and your control when the time has come for a tournament game, because you only have so much thinking. Like your mana bar is depleting with every decision. These, you know, fueled up 20 somethings that are your opponents, they're born after you started playing or whatever, they can think for 100 years, right? You got to be like, okay, this is what I've got. I'm making the decisions in the command phase, the second, third turn, then we're going to execute. Don't be running out of time. Don't be clocking yourself. Don't be doing silly stuff.
Oh,
Do
that's
you
solid advice.
Well, I guess one last question for me until I come up with another one. Do you ever find yourself using your plasma or your Psychomancer like in a phase and then really wish you had not used it that phase, instead like maybe you use it to score points, but now you're like, oh man, I really need to charge this unit, but they're going to heroic, or maybe they're going to mist, right? Or have some form of reactive move. Does that ever hit you and you're like, oh man, that really messed me up?
It could in theory. I don't think I've ever had it happen. Just it would be a rare game state where there were multiple valid targets to use Herald of Terror on, and they didn't just pass, right? Like you have to be. They failed, and there were two choices, and I chose wrong. That's 3 gates that are comparatively rare. So you know, in my mind, a 3-gate thing is like a strat that requires that you be under half strength and your opponent be just disembarked from a transport and it turn 2 or whatever. You know, 3 gates is too many. You don't. Things that happen after 3 gates don't happen.
Do they ever all make it, and then like your plan going into like the next turn is kind of like poofed?
Invariably, you will be facing some chunky monkey, you know, some Necron player with a big old grin on his face will be pushing 20 warriors at you, and you're like, all right, buddy, I'm gonna scare your warriors, and then you're not gonna be able to get them back with your strat, and you're not gonna be able to resurrect their techno. I have to do it twice because you've got a Royal Warden in there, because you're, and you guys better
we
have
gotta
Royal
keep
Wardens.
the king. We gotta keep the king on
I
a
don't
warm
have a
odds,
Royal
man.
Damn
Warden.
heads if I see you. All right.
I don't have a
None of
Royal
that.
Warden, but I have a Catacomb Command Barge. So like I'm always gonna have OC on my warriors, if that makes sense. I have a Ghost Arc, so like Battle Shock. I've been Battle Shock before. I've never really had to deal with it, if that makes sense.
Put Royal Wardens on your warriors, okay?
This is
Done.
gonna be a whole new video we have to do.
Listen.
The Silent King.
Someone's going to
mods.
drive a Rhino into your 400-point unit, and you're going to stand there helpless, or you fall back, shoot, and charge, and take over the game. Royal Warden in the Warriors, not even a question. But in any case, say you're trying to psychomance someone, and they're pushing up on you. Their leadership 6 down to a 7. We'll say they don't have the king in this purpose, and you're like, okay, I got to do it twice, right? Because they have a Royal Warden, and at the start of a phase, he can unbattle shock them, right? So if I battle shock them, and then the shooting phase begins, they'll just unbattle shock. However, then I will use Psychomancers again, right? I'll just go until the. So you have to hit 3, and invariably you will fail. And you'll get it on the third one. And the other player will be sitting there a little like, oh man, but I'm still OC because of the. And you're like, you can use your Royal Warden to undo it. He goes, what? And you're like, yeah, it's one of his abilities. Oh, I didn't realize that. Once a game, cool. Like,
Oh my god.
my eternal war against bad Necron players is perpetual, but we will wage it with honor.
Well, hopefully I never play you, so that way you don't judge me. No, I don't know. I
Put
just
the Royal Warden, Shinji, get in the robot, all right? Put the Royal Warden in the Warriors.
But then you lose the free strat. And
Yeah, dude, and moving 11 with Warriors, it's so addicting.
So my only rebuttal to the Rhino, right, is that when you charge and you kill a model, I'll just break unit coherency and I'll bring them back in my next turn, right? Like, obviously, it's not always going to happen, but I don't know. I've experienced where people try to stop me with something, and I'll CP reroll a made save. and it sounds stupid, right? But I'll kill a unit, like half of my unit, and then reanimate them behind, right? I hear you. I have to try it. I was running 2 warrior bricks, and I had one with the Royal Warden.
Okay, but hold on. Like, the Warriors are shooting, the equivalent weight of this guy is 4 Warriors, right? It's 5 nowadays, but it used to be 4. He shoots just as hard as they do, right? Because he's got 4 shots for 2 damage instead of 8 shots for 1 damage.
Mm-hmm.
He essentially turns the unit into a 25-man warrior unit as far as offense goes, right?
That's fair.
And he gives you fall back and shoot, which is great. If you're especially if you're a Plasmancer unit and you're actually doing work with your warriors, and you're using the Awoken Dynasty reroll hit strat, or your goodness knows a Canoptic Court and you're just rerolling hits for being yourselves. There's lots of great things from it, but the fallback and charge is what matters. Like, the Warriors are such a menace because the opponent cannot tie them down, and they just like glom up and then they lock down the entire enemy's army. If you can't fall back and charge, you're going to have some 8-bound piling into you or something. And you're like, okay, well, the plan is on my opponent's turn, he's going to kill 7 or 8, and then I'll break the coherency, and then I'll do this. Or the plan could be, wazah, nothing. I just don't have, I'll fall back, blap. Like Royal Wardens are incredibly important on warrior units. I would take them before I took a reanimator. Now, my Royal Wardens my warrior units tend to be offensive. I'm a Plasmancer guy. I like to do harm with my warriors. I'm not typically about like becoming invincible with a Ghost Arc and a bunch of
Crypto Thralls.
Canoptic Reanimators and Crypto Thralls. Yeah. So it's definitely a different way to do things, but
he's been waiting for this, Kylan. He's been waiting to get on stream with us. He's like, listen, I like your
too expensive. It is the unit that is too expensive to not activate. And if activation just means that it changes its position and holds a primary, that can be fine. But you can never let the situation happen where 3 Inceptors are now tying up your Wardens or your warriors, and you can't get back to the objective.
On the objective, yeah.
What if I drop a Scarab unit for it? Like, if I have points for it, what if I just drop a Scarab unit and then run him solo? Is that not valid? Or do I have to have him in the warrior?
I feel like you gotta have him in the unit.
What?
Well, because then you can turn off Battle Shock. I don't know.
You're high. No, he goes in the warrior brick so they can fall back and shoot and charge. Obviously.
That's what he's been telling this whole time, man. That's the whole synergy. We're trying to use all his abilities.
I don't really go here. No, I hear you. Okay, I'm gonna have to try it. I'll bring it this weekend to an RTT. All right, I will try it without the Overlord.
Dude, we're hurting Walter's head now, man.
It's cheaper than an Overlord, all right? Like, I could see an argument for 1 Technomancer and no Overlord, right? And you're just like, my unit is slightly cheaper, right? Like, this unit is obviously incredibly expensive. I could see the argument if you're a defensive guy where you're like, look, I bought them a Techno and then I bought them Crypto Thralls. This is now a 200-point unit with 140 points of support. Then I threw in a transport and a guy to ride in that transport so it doesn't explode, and a reanimator. I'm not giving them another character, all right? I could see that argument. But if you're already giving them an 85-point character who does nothing, why would you possibly hesitate for even a second at turning it into a 50-point character that improves the unit vastly?
The problem is I didn't trust you with the Psychomancer, and you've proved it wrong, right? So now I feel obligated. I have to do it. I have to just trust the system, and then, all right, I will try it this weekend.
Look, it seems very clear to me that you want fallback, shoot, and charge on your 300-point unit.
You're right. It is very clear. I feel like it's some Jedi trick. He's just like, this is not the character you want in your warrior brick.
I mean, I'm not sure that you want a defensive warrior brick. Like, I'm not committed to that life. But if you do have that life, you can never be like, well, the Flame Land Raider has engaged 10 of these guys. Fantastic.
Yeah. No, I feel you.
It can happen. It's a very real problem. Very real problem. Well,
did you say you had a Catacomb Command Barge?
I do, yeah.
How many points of support does this 200-point unit have in your list?
Did you not watch the video me and Kylan did from Cherokee? It's like 1,000
I block certain things out of my mind.
It's like 1,000 points. Yeah. It's a warrior brick. I've been doing fine with it. It's a warrior brick with Overlord, Orican, Crypto Thralls. Then you have a Reanimator. You have the Ghost Arc. You have a Luminor. Then you have a Catacomb Command, or I think I already said that. It's like 1,000 points. It's like 1,000, maybe 1,005 points. Especially in a team event setting, right? It's one of those things where it's like in a matrix. Like when I was playing with Noah at Carolina, I was running Ultramarines, and I did fine with Ultramarines. I think I went like 4-1 or something like that. But like every pairing we did, and my loss was to Conan. Every pairing we did, Noah was like, what would be really good in all these armies right here that we don't have a single green for? Dan's warrior brick list. And it's like,
I mean, when it works, right?
Yeah.
But I just, if you have 1,000 points supporting a 200-point unit, I'm always like, what if you took 3 of those units, right? 3 warrior bricks, each with 1 Plasmancer and nothing else, and they just killed the things that you're trying to tie up. How about that? Jazz hands, right? They could have
off the board.
They could have Royal Wardens, and it's still cheaper than the extra Command Barge and the Reanimator and the Crypto Thralls and, God help us, the Ghost Arc and Illuminor Xeras. Like, the amount of support that you're giving a battle line unit is absolutely insane.
But have you tried it? Have you played?
Have I tried Silvertide, my brother in Christ?
No. Have you tried the list that me and Kylan's been running? Like with all the support for the warrior brick.
I have played a variant. It was called the Clog. I tried it after getting knocked out at Warzone in a couple of TUSA scrims. It was a specialized Eldar Predator. The idea was that this warrior brick and its various things were essentially impossible for them to interact with, and it certainly did that well. But I was ultimately defeated by a Gladius list in an intercountry scrim with a very severe, like, he shot it with everything in the universe, charged it with Gulliman and Calgar. Challenged out the character. He had the taxman running around, so the strats were all getting very expensive. And I was just like, oh, this isn't the way. Once the unit is down to like 3 guys, and you're like, oh, I bring a bunch back. Now there's a 12-man warrior unit. They activate into a bunch of Ultramarines, and they're backed up by like the Ghost Shock, the Ghost Arc tank shocking, and the Reanimator charges someone's stuff. And I'm just like, this is too much support for this unit. It was.
Yeah.
Now, that was my experience. You may, I'm not trying to say give up on the defensive archetype, right? Like, if that's your vibe, that's your vibe. But please, for the love of the Silent King, if you are on defensive warrior archetype, fire that Overlord and put a Royal Warden in his place.
Kylan, I'll do it if you do it.
I could see it. I mean, I could drop
at Worlds. There were 2 Necron players who won.
Oh, we lost them both. We lost them both at the same time. I don't know what happened there.
Did the video end?
No, we're still going.
I was trying to big league. But the point is, believe my words, obey my dog, and that's a Zoolander reference, youngins. But Put the Royal Wardens in the robot, Shinji. That's an Ava reference. God,
I'm gonna run it this weekend.
Thank
Out of respect to you, my Necron hero, right? John Lennon's definitely my role model.
Fair,
Shout out to
yeah.
John.
Likewise,
I love you,
likewise.
John. I love John. I will try it out of respect to you
Thank you.
and see how it goes, because I didn't try the Psychomancer. Apparently, it's been working. And then if it doesn't work for me, I will message you and I'll say, hey, no. I'm just kidding. I try the same thing too. I try whatever people suggest. Look, if you want to be better, you have to try things that seem out of the box, out of the norm, right?
The worst thing is to crouch in a fixed perfection and be like, I built the ultimate list in 2012 and it's just still the ultimate list. No, you gotta be willing to like shift.
Like Kylan, I think we were in the chat, right? And I mentioned the warrior brick or whatever, and then you started playing it, and then you started loving it, and it's just been something that we've been building together, just trying to come up with different forms of the warrior brick. I got Euless to start running the warrior brick, which is great. And that's my point is, right, is that it's something that people don't really think about ever running, right? No one was really like running that. Besides,
have you guys tried Night Scythe with it?
Oh my god!
I don't actually own one
when you need him. I have one. It's not fully painted.
A very different approach to warriors, right? This would be much more the sort of thing where you'd have 20 warriors and a Plasmancer and a Royal Warden and a Night Scythe, and you don't have all the support. But the point is that the Night Scythe has two rules that are interesting. The first is that it has the deep strike rule and can come in on the first, second, or third turn, regardless of scenario considerations. And the second is that at the end of the fight phase, they can re-embark back into the Night Scythe. So if you get the first turn and you deploy the Night Scythe behind your walls in your home zone 1,000 miles away from the enemy, right? Then on top two, the Night Scythe takes 20 warriors anywhere you want them on the table, and they steal an objective. And depending on what's on the objective, you can either take it for your own or just clean the enemy off, break their sticky, and then hop back in the Night Scythe. And if the opponent wants to deal with it, they not only have to deal with the fact that your Night Scythe is unchargeable because it's a plane without hover, they have to deal with the fact that your Night Scythe is behind them, having taken their home objective, right, in linchpin or whatever, which can be huge, but it's almost unstoppable. Like, in order to stop this from happening, the opponent has to screen their objective from a plane being able to land within 11 inches of it, right? Because the guys are going to get out 3, shoot, and then potentially move if they have a Chronomancer in there, right? And if they do that, you just go somewhere else, right? You pop up on another objective, shoot them in the front lines, hop back in the Night Scythe. Like, it's a very powerful and versatile piece. It's a very different way to do it. Obviously, it's almost impossible to get Illuminor with them. It's very hard to what's the name of the thing? To like keep the defense unit with it, so it doesn't really go with the deployment thing. But just my contribution to the Stone Soup of Necron Warrior thing is try a Canoptic Court offensive warrior air force, and I think you will see that things get really weird.
Yeah, Euless, the guy that's supposed to be here with us, but he's been feeling ill. He's been trying to sell us on the same idea. Matter of fact, Canoptic Court is what he was suggesting, because you can just bring him down, move, and then reroll all the hits. So, two great minds.
Well,
where are they?
Well, Walter, again, man, seriously appreciate your time. Definitely good luck at freaking Nations this weekend. Definitely will be watching from afar, seeing how you're doing, and all the Necron peeps at home got to be rooting this guy on as well. So, any closing remarks, man, before we wrap up here?
I don't know. Put Royal Wardens in your...
Or one last here. I'll direct a more question. Maybe you left a really good one as far as like for newish players, like as far as how to look at the game. But as far as maybe like one piece of advice for like some newer Necron players at home, maybe one thing that they could like focus on this month to really you feel would really help their game exponentially.
Yes. Look into my eyes. Ready? Take 3 Scorpec units of 3 each and 3 Scorpec lords to lead them, and put those in your lists and play 10 games with it. I don't care what your formation is, and I don't care what else is in the list. You will develop an appreciation for peace trading, which will stick with you for the remainder of your career.
Yep,
I love it.
it's true. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, Walter, again, man, seriously appreciate your time. Daniel, of course, as well. Glad you're able to join us. Throw some good questions back and forth. So appreciate you. And yeah, if you all stuck around this long, seriously, appreciate you watching. Hopefully this was as valuable as it was to us as it was to you. And as always, we will catch you in the next one.